We're joined by ESPN NFL analyst Dan Orlovsky, whose appearances on One Bills Live are presented by Caesars Sportsbook, an official mobile sports betting partner of the Buffalo Bills. All right, Dan, so we'll quickly review what was a 31-point beatdown of the Carolina Panthers. Turnovers playing a huge role in that. The first multi-takeaway game for the Bills on the season after being experts at it last season with 12 such games turns into 17 extra points, and those were points they didn't even need. What stuck out? Because, I know you watch film and your eyes probably fall out of your head every week, but what was the lasting take from the performance this week? And if it was on defense, that's fine because they kind of showed up too.
I think the overall things I walked away from were just, once again, the importance of Reggie Gilliam and how impactful that he is to their run game. And, there was certainly a mentality that we saw early on of running the football. And that was something that I think all of us thought that there wasn't that thought process or mentality in the Atlanta game 2 weeks ago. So just that understanding and reestablishment of this is a major identity of who their football team is. I'm not going to kid everybody. Like, if I told you guys right now my phone is ringing and the Bills were going to run toss again, it would be accurate. They ran toss, and that was really it. I mean, they ran toss. They ran a little bit outside zone, and to their credit, and an issue for Carolina, they just could not stop the toss. But you love the fact that they got to it. Sometimes those two tight ends, sometimes with Gilliam as a tight end and alignment-wise or at that fullback. So I loved how they ran the football and the reestablishment of an identity for that. I think that the other side of the football, I know we didn't play a ton, but I was specifically seeing what Hairston looked like. I thought he moved well. Mm-hmm. I thought he was engaged. He tackled at least once on the perimeter physically. So I think that you walk away from that encouraged. I thought that they ran to the football much better. Their run defense was much better, when it comes to the gap. And this is a team that's been running the football well, Carolina. So the gap being sound in the gap run game, that was really big. So those are the good, right? I think the takeaways that give me, hesitation or concern or just to pay attention to, Josh did not play well, specifically in the first half. Did not handle pressure well with the blitzes. Thought he made some poor reads. Thought he missed some throws uncharacteristically. Better in the second half, yes. And then obviously the two things on defense, Ed's injury is real. And then if I was in offense, I would be hunting the safeties in coverage about as often as I can. And so those are the things that at least got my attention from a 30,000-foot view.
So the secondary and you mentioned it, Max Hairston in there, and also Hancock came in, made a nice tackle on a breakaway from Dowdle. They're trying to get younger, a little bit more athletic back there.
Yeah.
How much difference did it make, if any?
I certainly think Hairston made a difference, Steve. I just don't think he played a ton or a lot, So it's, would you like to have him on the field more? And I understand they're probably slowly working him in for the long ball. So I think what you saw, you're encouraged about. I don't know if it made a quote-unquote giant impact, but there's stuff there that you see, at least in those snaps that he had, and you say, that should be impactful, that can be impactful, that can help. I think Hancock, I don't know. I want to be honest. I don't know a ton about his game and everything that he's going to bring, but I do see stuff on tape when the safeties, at least in specific to coverage, they still give you a reservation. They still give you hesitancy, and trying to just be as candid as possible from an offensive perspective. Those would be matchups. Those would be things that I would be hunting, and I promise you everybody else is going to.
Right. And then last thing about last week's game, Michael Hoecht was a real shot in the arm for this team's pass rush. He was an absolute menace in that game. Granted, you're going against a backup quarterback who had not played a lot, and so maybe, you can take advantage of maybe his lack of timing, although he got all the reps in practice leading up to the game. But what did you make of him being a force multiplier for this pass rush?
Huge. It's huge, and it's even greater now because of obviously the injury with Ed. This is a team that structurally doesn't necessarily want to have bodies in the rush game. They would prefer to play with a four-man rush or a fire zone rush, commit to coverage, get you into those situations, and allow those guys to win on rush edges. So it's. I thought he was great. I mean, I've been a huge fan of his since his time in LA. So he's an impactful rusher. Obviously, Epinesa with a huge play. Bosa is going to be big. So you're encouraged. Again, that's another thing. That's what I've tried to tell everybody. Like, just let's get these bodies on defense healthy till we make a declaration if the Bills are going to be what many people expected to be in the preseason, right? Like, let's get everyone healthy for the most part and then truly gauge what they are.
And coming into this game, they didn't know if they were going to have Kincaid until, a day or so before the game or the day of the game. And they have not been able to get Moore and Palmer and these guys, everybody, healthy all at the same time. And I have made the point, and I don't know if it's true or not, but you can tell me what you think. This roster, maybe other rosters are like this as well, but I think it's important for this roster to have all the guys on the outside really healthy and feeling good for this offense to look like it should, particularly when they throw the football. Once they start, Palmer out, Moore in and out of the lineup, Kincaid in and out of the lineup, it causes real problems.
Yeah, Steve, I'd say this. Pass game-wise, I don't think it's even a question. The three most important parts to their pass game on the outside are Palmer, Kincaid, and Shakir. I don't think I'm, revealing any crazy information. And a lot of people, yes, Kincaid and Shakir. I think Palmer's huge. I really do. We are just at a time with this offense that they have to have somebody on the outside that is consistent with creating big plays, consistent in winning one-on-ones, consistent with vertical speed, consistent with chunk gains. That's not Khalil. He's outstanding as a football player. That's just not his game. And Kincaid brings that, but we know that it's a tight end, and there's a little bit of unavailability attached to him right now. And so Palmer, for me, and I know he didn't play last week, he's enormous. And that's why, I walk away a week or so from trade deadline, and I still feel that this is a team that at least I would expect Brendan Beane to be active on the phones when it comes to a wide receiver addition, because I just think at some point that really trifecta, that third piece one-on-one is going to be huge. And I don't know what Palmer's long-term health prognosis is.
Yeah, Coach McDermott said he's kind of day-to-day this week, so we'll see where that goes through the course of the practice week. On to the Chiefs here, who are coming in as hot as a firecracker, winner of 5 of the last 6. Since Week 7, they lead the league in point differential after waxing the Raiders and winning by 21 last night. They're a plus 52. And their defense is top 5 in the league. So a lot of boxes to check to handle this crew. And the Bills largely handed them their first loss last year, thanks mainly to the 2 takeaways they had. The early interception by Hamlin, and then the one at the end of the game to ice it, against with the Bernard interception on a late heave by Mahomes. I tend to feel like this has to be a multi-takeaway game again if the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs. But here's the other part of it. We saw a resurgence of Buffalo's pass rush this past week. We know that the left tackle is still a blinking red light for the Chiefs. How much can this pass rush, do you think, and it's only a 1-game sample, I realize it, but how critical is it for them to help some of those less than ideal matchups on the back end that you already pointed out?
There's 3 huge key matchups or points in this game, and that's the first one. Because I think the thing that has to be most concerning for Bills fans, and honestly for everybody in the AFC, if you've just watched Mahomes this year, he looks like Mahomes from 4 or 5 years ago, where I call plus plays, they're showing up in bunches right now, where when the rush wins, or you feel like you've caged him in, or you feel like the coverage was ideal, indoor perfect, he's back to making those what just happened plays. And everybody knows because Buffalo's quarterback does it, right? He's back to making those unbelievable run around, defy the laws of physics. That should not happen plays. And so the pass rush is going to be enormous because Patrick looks as creative and elusive back there as he has looked in, I would say, 2 or 3 seasons. And that's saying a lot. So I think it's going to be huge. I think the second thing is, in this game, and I'll flip it to the other side, Chris, like, I think the tight ends are enormous in this game. I think the play action pass with the tight ends are enormous. This is a good defense in Kansas City. Pass rush hasn't been great, but you can get some chunk throws against this defense with those 2 tight ends and the play action game. And I think the second thing is the RPO game's got to be huge. You can kick the ball out into the alley towards the numbers or outside and make some plays on this defense. So those are the 3 things for me that are enormous in this game.
And then just quickly, because Andy Reid just seems to do this better than anybody, I'm just amazed at how he's able to consistently create voids in a defense for just a single target to fill out on the field, whether it's deep out or middle of the field, and it's not just a simple clear out. It's much more layered than that. Why is that seemingly so easy for him to draw up? I mean, I realize he's got one of the fastest receiving cores in the league, but the multi-layer ways in which he creates voids in defenses for receivers to run into, and they've got 10 yards of space in every direction around them, it's just amazing to me.
Yeah, there's 2 reasons why, because it's a great question. Okay, so number one, Andy Reid he's always been great at math. It's always been a math equation for him. He knows that he has really 10 to work with, and you have 11. So he's always trying to figure out numbers to impact you, whether they're trying to overload one side of the ball and see if you commit an overload to that, or if you don't, they'll take advantage of it. If you do, they have so many different people that on the opposite side of a overload, they could take advantage of. It's very similar to what, and Buffalo's run it a little bit this year, 4x1, but kind of what was so prevalent for you guys last year was that are you committing numbers to that 4-person side? Great, then we'll work the one-on-one. If you're not, then we work our 4-man. So that's number one. He's just great in the numbers game. And I think the second thing is when they're healthy, and they have been for the last 2 or 3 weeks, you got to think about it like this, Chris. Okay, starting point is Kelsey. Who do we want around him? Whether it's zone or man, who do you want around him? Like, who do you trust to be around him in the pass game? And then you move to Rashee Rice. Well, who do you feel good about that matchup with? Because Rashee is strong. Not only is he fast, but he's strong. So you got to have somebody that matches, don't care man or zone, just strength-wise. And then you go down to a player like Xavier Worthy. Who's fast enough to run with him? Who's twitchy enough to run with them? Who can handle him in space? And then you go to a player like Hollywood, who's vertically fast as well. So you're constantly asking these questions to defenses, or as a defensive, like, okay, we're not even calling man, but who do we want around these guys with where they are? And that's why you create some of those voids.
Yeah, and that's really the problem when you face the Chiefs. I mean, they've got, like you said, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, Travis Kelce. And now Pacheco looks like he probably will not play this week. He's week to week with an MCL. He didn't play in last year's matchup either. But how much with the weapons we just talked about, we've seen it. I mean, it seems like it's not true, but it seems like Kansas City throws it on every down. But Pacheco has been a factor, right? I mean, so
sure.
What's his minus bring to the table for their offense?
Yeah, Steve, I'll tell you the best thing, or one of the best things they've done this year is actually, okay, they've gotten under center a little bit, and they've put 2 tight ends on the field. Sometimes they've had 6 offensive linemen on the field, and they've just tried to be efficient in their run game. That's the thing that also has massively turned the corner for the offense, is just efficient run. And so Pacheco brings that. He brings that willingness to go get 3 or 4 yards. Kareem Hunt still can do that. They have this rookie, Brashard Smith, who's also a very good player. He's not as violent or physical or grimy, I guess, as Pacheco, but he's really smooth and he's really shifty. So if no Pacheco, do I believe that there's this considerable drop off. I don't, and that's not disrespectful. Kareem's still really good, and Rashard's a guy that they've tried to get more touches on more and more. He'll remind at least Bills fans of a guy, Jet McKinnon from years ago, and just skill set and the way that they use him.
Yeah, he's a fast guy. SMU, I think, is where he came out of. He was seventh round pick. He can fly. So just what we need, more speed on the field for the Chiefs. Wonderful. Anything really quick here, Dan, that sticks out to you about this defensive front for the Chiefs? You mentioned that their pass rush hasn't been getting home as much as it usually does. Karlaftis had a nice game last night, but what do you see there, and what do you think the hang-up might be? Because I know they got Amenahu back from his ACL injury from last year, so he's back in the fold. I saw they lost Omar Norman-Lott to a season-ending injury a couple of weeks back, but what's going on with the front seven there?
They just haven't been nearly as dominant. They haven't been winning their one-on-ones. Their pressure package is still there. That is going to be a huge talking point moving forward, is just how you handle the pressure package. But they're just not – Chris is not nearly as dominant right now as he has been in the past. Is he capable of it? I would imagine. Does he have another run in him? I would absolutely imagine. He just hasn't been as dominant of a player. And I can't pinpoint exactly the why. I just know that him and Karlaftis haven't been, whether it's individual dominance or duo together, they haven't been the impactful rushers they've been in the past. So, I would be not surprised. I would not be surprised if this is a game where, throughout it, I just talked about James and his importance. Josh, be very aggressive throwing the football, because this pass rush just hasn't hunted the way it has in the past.
What has Spagnuolo done to kind of overcompensate that? They're the number one. I mean, they're bringing extra people. I mean, what are they doing? Because
crazy pressures. It's those exotic pressures. You get in cut splits. Here comes corner blitz. The backers are blitzing at a really high level, both Bolton and Tranquil. So McDuffie's a weapon. Everyone knows that. So it's still Spags and using those crazy blitzes. It's just the defensive line is not dominating right now what it has been.
Have you noticed anything? And we've talked about it a little bit. And we saw, Josh had a rough first half against Carolina, despite the fact that they were way up. I mean, have they struggled in Buffalo with their offensive line to get their protection set? Because it seems like there's been a couple of times, particularly against Atlanta and a little bit against the Patriots, where they had a free runner because they set their protection to the wrong side. I don't know if that happens to other offenses on a regular basis, maybe once or twice a game. I don't know. Maybe it does. But it seems like the Bills have been victims of that a lot over the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, identification's become a thing. It shows a little bit more on the road than it does at home. I'm a believer who thinks that this is a must-win game because of that. I think if Super Bowl is very real, it's got to be going through Buffalo, just in part because of that reason, Steve. This is an offense that wants to utilize information pre-snap, specifically in those passing downs, and figure out who's coming, who's not, who's covering, who isn't. And so I think that identification's become a big deal. Communication and strain has become a big deal as well. And so I also think, and I love Josh, everyone knows that, I think he's played very frustrated over the last 2 or 3 games, and forcing the football in moments where he hasn't for the last 2 or 3 years. So specific to him, I also think that's something that he has to clean up.
Yeah. And then real quick, before we let you go, Dan, you mentioned, pre-snap identification and how important that is. We're seeing, I don't know if it's a full-on trend yet. You watch more football than I do, but it seems as though there are some defensive coordinators now that will have a defender follow a receiver in motion across the formation to give the appearance of man, and then they're not. They end up playing zone. How much of a trend is that amongst defensive coordinators now?
It's as common as anything going right now. I mean, that 5-6 years ago, that was never the case. Yeah. Never, ever, ever the case. And so nowadays, when you see that guy go across the formation and someone runs with him, a lot of times you'll see a secondary motion as well to try and, confirm or deny, because once he runs with them, there's really not a tell anymore. And so that's really where those pieces come into play, the backs and the tight ends, for that information rather than the motion. But you can still use that motion to identify pressure, because you go that way, no one goes with you, I'm thinking pressure. And so I think that's a little bit more of a tell than coverage.
Yeah.
So I told this to Brownie in the first opening segment of the show, and then we had Mitch Morse, former center of the Bills, on. He kind of said the same thing. If the Bills want to win this, I think they're going to have to score. I think this is going to be one of those games where you got to keep up with them on the scoreboard and vice versa. I could be wrong, but how do you see it playing out?
I totally agree. And I know we're not even in November yet. We're a week away from being halfway through the regular season. That's going to be the case into the playoffs and through the playoffs. I mean, I got a pretty good feel of who the playoff teams are going to be. And if they are who I think they're going to be, the top 3 or 4, you're going to have to score 32 plus to beat them when it matters the most. You're just going to. So if you're going to play Indy, if you're going to play Kansas City, if you're going to play Pittsburgh, if you're going to play LA, if you're going to play Denver, you're going to have to score 32 plus to knock them off. So, and that's no different this week.
Right.
Thanks as always, Dan. Appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Dan.
All right, guys. Thank you.